What's good, my guys? It's your boy E coming at you with another one real quick regarding the CPI and PPI. Well, we actually had the CPI report today. The PPI comes out tomorrow. Okay, so the CPI report, the inflation report, was really bad, and it was basically a disaster. There are a lot of traders and participants in the market that was basically buying the dip all summer, thinking that inflation was so-called transitory. And they were basically bitch-smacked and told to get their mind right. Now, we know that inflation is really complex and it has a lot of moving parts, but it's really not that hard to determine whether inflation is either increasing or decreasing. And the report that we got today clearly shows that it's increasing and the numbers don't lie. So if you look at the report, all the optimism was basically predicated on the point that inflation was basically zeroing out month after month and was going to drop. A lot of people in the government were saying basically, we've got inflation under control, don't worry about it, it's transitory, etc. But this morning the report came in hot and we've basically seen increases on all line items month over month. 0.1% isn't really that bad considering where we're at this past summer. But look at where the pricing pressures are coming from. If you go back and listen to what they were saying before, we were basically told don't pay attention to anything except core inflation, which is basically everything except for food and energy. They said it was too volatile to be factored into the numbers. They said we shouldn't care about food or energy for your day-to-day life. That's what they said. Granted, I know I'm not in the big body no more, pumping straight premium and, paying $80 to fill up my tank, but still energy seemed to be a problem, especially at the pumps and from the looks of it on people's electricity bills as well. Quite frankly, I don't know about you. Shoot, I'm kind of feeling hungry right now. And at the least, I know I need to eat at least once a day, right? Look at this. Core inflation is now up 0.6% month over month. And it looks like it's accelerating up again if you dig a little deeper into the data month over month. Now they're saying don't focus on core inflation anymore. Look at energy. It's down 5%. So before they were saying only worry about core inflation. Now they're saying don't pay attention to core inflation, just look at energy because that's down. Don't get me wrong, it's good that energy is down, but I think we need to look at the whole report and take all the data in its totality. The whole report across the board was bad. It was basically horrific aside from energy. You can't just avoid the bad things and focus only on the good, especially when it's convenient for you. Shelter costs are up from 0.5% to 0.7%. Shelter costs is by far the biggest line items for most Americans in the economy, and it's getting worse, basically meaning that it's getting more expensive. You might be asking, why are shelter costs getting more expensive, and what does that have to do with me? Well, when you raise interest rates consistently, you're basically raising the cost to buy a home. It can cost 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 times as much to borrow the money to get that house. So then buying a home becomes more expensive. Then more people are like, I'm good, prices are too high, I'll wait for prices to come down, and instead I'll go and try to rent. More people choose to rent, the demand for rental properties goes up dramatically. The supply of apartments to rent basically stays the same while there's an increase in people that want or need to rent. People that might have bought a house when interest rates are lower are now going up and bidding up the rental market. And that causes the price of rent to skyrocket. Some landlords have no choice but to raise the cost of rent, especially if they don't have a locked-in rate. Some people might say shelter costs isn't really a big deal. At least they're saving money on gasoline. But again, shelter costs are the biggest line item for most Americans. What this means is that your dollar isn't stretching as far month over month. Because one line item is cheaper doesn't mean that some other line item or all the other line items are taking it back in some other category. Transportation services are up 0.5% as opposed to being down 0.5%. This includes things like maintenance and insurance on your car. For the record, I've been saying for the longest that financing a car, especially a brand new car, is basically one of the worst investments that you can make. But again, we'll save that for another video. Medical care inflation doubled, and this includes things like hospital visits, emergency visits, and health insurance. Even apparel went up. And from what I've heard, there's a massive extra inventory problem. So how that happened and went up, I don't even know. Food did decelerate to 0.8%, but it is still one of the hottest line items. 1.1 to 0.8% isn't that bad if it was the rate at which things were cooling down. But again, this is the pace that it's increasing that's cooling down. And those two things are dramatically different. We are still maintaining all the same inflation and pricing pressures as last year. We are still up 11.4% in food. And shit, I'm hungrier now than I was even earlier. So trust me when I tell you, food is still a basic commodity that people need. Now, at the surface of this report, it doesn't really seem that scary. But nearly every single line item was up this month, excluding energy, despite the fact that energy was a major factor working to pull down the overall inflation percentage. But what happens when inflation starts to persist and then energy prices start to go up again or even skyrocket? By the way, like many analysts are predicting, especially going into the winter. I'm just saying, if this is the report when energy is dropping, what happens in the case where energy plateaus or even starts to go back up? Even if they don't go back up all the way to all-time highs, what happens if they even just start to tick up 1% or 2 or 3 month over month? I mean, that could happen with Russia shutting down pipelines and blowing up energy plants over there, allegedly. Now, obviously, the market tanked on this report, and as bad as it looks, it's still an improvement over the numbers that we got from this past summer. And like I said, that's basically thanks to energy. But the problem is the markets rallied substantially from those levels. Markets saw energy go down and saw the slowdown in inflation and assumed that the Fed was going to go ahead and reverse course. A couple weeks ago, the Fed's futures market rates were showing that most people in the markets thought that inflation would be under control and that the Fed's rate hikes would stop by the end of 2022. And in 2023, the Fed would go ahead and cut rates. And what that did was induced basically this bear market rallying to the upside. But the numbers don't lie. And basically, the report shows the cold, hard truth that, best case scenario, that thesis is incorrect. So anyways, it looks like inflation is not over, and the fight to get it under control and back down, unfortunately, isn't over yet either. Inflation isn't going to just magically drop down to 2%, which is the Fed's target rate. History says that when you have this type of inflation, what brings it down is time where you have consistent monetary tightening, you get pushed into a recession, and you allow time for supply to catch up with demand and hopefully cross above it so prices start going down. And the only way that happens realistically is if the Fed attacks this thing head on and doesn't pussyfoot around anymore. And basically from the last few meetings, it seems like they are on that track. And in the last few reports, they have said that they need to see consistent months of inflation actually downtrending to believe that it's actually going down. And basically this report says, nah, we're not there yet. We're not even close. I think they're starting to realize that now. But again, this is my opinion, and I'd love and be interested to hear what you guys think about it. Is it going to go down? Is it going to continue going up? Is it going to plateau and be stubborn at these levels? Is it going to go to the moon? Let me know in the comments what you think. And again, have a great rest of your day or night. Don't forget to like and subscribe in order to keep getting info that really matters and helps you gain an edge in the markets and in life in general. Also, don't forget to sign up for the daily watch list, as it will be basically on a first come, first serve basis in the beginning until I am able to scale up a little bit. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks for your time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And again, it's your boy E. Holla at me.